Welcome to Redirect, Immigration Law and Perspectives, a weekly dive into the world of immigration law and its human consequences. I'm your host, Stephen Robbins, joined shortly by co-host, fellow immigration attorney out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Matthew Archambault. This week we're talking to fellow immigration attorney Luis Cortes about developments in the ongoing Daca litigation. What's going on with that case? Why is Daca still around? They tried to end it over a year ago, and yet here we are filing DACA renewals. And it turns out it's thanks in part to people like Luis. So we wanted to talk to him. Really good guy. And I just dropped something. I'm going to leave that in because I don't like editing the show. What else is going on? Well, this week I had an interesting experience with a new client. Last Friday, actually, exactly a week ago, I got a phone call from somebody panicking about a detained single mother of six, including a 3-month-old baby that she was breastfeeding before she was brought into immigration custody. And so we scheduled a bond hearing, and on Thursday I went to the Northwest Detention Center, which is a privately run and operated immigrant detention facility. And for this bond hearing, well, the day before I found out that this particular client had been ordered removed at the border when she tried to enter for the first time over 10 years ago. And therefore, not to get too technical with it, but she does not qualify for bond. Now, she does have some pending relief. There's some things that she can do. She has a pending application that will allow her to stay here for the rest of her life. It's just pending. And so, but she doesn't qualify for bond. So we had the hearing anyways because it was already scheduled. And I asked the guard, because her family came. Her 6 kids were there, and the client was there in her sort of prison uniform. And I said to the guard, look, I know there's a no touching rule, but she's got this 3-month-old baby. This is a critical time in the development of a child, of a baby. It's important for the mother too. Moms in those first few months sometimes have a real hard time. And I mean, I can't even imagine really being taken away from your kids. And so I said, can we just let her hold her baby? I mean, there's no, if we work out the scenarios, what's going to happen if we let this thing happen? And anyways, the guard said, no, we can't do that. There's rules. We're very tightly regulated. So I said, okay, well, I'll ask the judge when we go up. So I went up and I told the judge, there's jurisdictional issues here. She's not going to qualify for bond, so we withdraw the request. But, Your Honor, this is your courtroom, and I would love it if my client could just sit in the corner for 5 minutes with her baby, which is right over there, 10 feet away. There's her baby. There's her. They're sitting very closely. What if we just let her hold her baby? And then the judge said, of course, well, that's not my call. I got to stay in my lane. You're asking me to go outside of the normal scope of my authority, blah, 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 blah. And so here we are in a room where everyone agrees that this lady should be allowed to hold her baby, and she's being kept from holding her baby by some rule written for who knows what reason. I mean, probably to keep people from passing contraband or to keep people from fighting or whatever. Rules that were not meant to keep women from holding small babies. And so then I had to go up and anyways, the story goes on and on of me spending all Thursday morning trying to find a way for this lady to be able to hold her child. And the big takeaway, I think, for me this week has been, don't forget to be human and to find opportunities to do the right thing. Rules are often arbitrary. They often didn't take into account every possible scenario. I'm not saying we should violate the law or violate rules willy-nilly, but let's remember what we're doing here on this planet, and that we have limited time here. We have limited time to do the right thing and to just be thinking human beings, right? Thinking and empathetic human beings. I think if everybody tried their best to do that, we would be in a much better place. So we've put in requests with everyone, with ICE, with the immigration office that has her application pending, to try and get this lady out as soon as possible. But it's now Friday afternoon, which means she's looking at probably having to spend at least the weekend detained, maybe longer. And there's no reason for this to happen. And all along the way, it's a series of people saying that they're doing a thing without any choice, and people who claim to have no agency in what they're doing, which is false. People have choices, and we make choices every day. And this lady is detained and separated from her child as the result of not just one. If this were a one person who caused this to happen, okay, any one person can cause any given terrible act, but this is a whole series of people along the way who allowed this to happen. And I think that that's what's scary, and also what we need to keep in mind and looking for opportunities in our own lives to do the right thing. So, folks, that's my sad and depressing story for the day. If you like the show, you can subscribe on iTunes. You can like us on Facebook, and also on patreon.com/redirect. That's where you can send us money, and we really appreciate it. We've got about 30-something patrons, and the money is a lot of help. After the first, I think, 4 years of doing this show, I realized, hey, these little expenses, the hosting fees, the website, the equipment, all this stuff adds up. So we appreciate people who've chipped in to help sort of motivate us and keep us going and keep the whole thing afloat. And if you have any questions or comments, make sure you hit us up at any of those places I just mentioned. Enjoy the conversation with Matthew and Luis.
Can we talk about what a little turd Jeff Sessions is? What a little Weasley little rat fucker he is. He has no backbone. This guy, now he has backbone in order to be a racist and to be his white nationalist self, right? But President Trump, all he's done is degrade him, insult him, his almost whole term as AG.
Right.
And totally. Right at the end, Sessions knew like this was coming. And so the report is that, Kelly called him up and said, hey, we need you to resign. And Sessions said, okay, but give me to the end of the week. And Kelly said, no, you're going to do it now. Why didn't Jeff Sessions just say, no, I'm not going to do it now. Now you got to fire me.
Fire me.
Because he had no backbone. This guy, for so many reasons, is infuriating. I just hope he has a horrible life. I really do.
Now we're going to talk about Daca with Luis Cortes coming up as soon as he,
he gets done. Done getting Alma's coffee. Do you think he's like trying to figure out like how many is it Splenda or just like regular sugar? Should he have like get her like one cream,
sent him
maybe
back
2
3 or 4 times to correct the order. But
yeah.
Do you remember when he came out to announce the rescission of the DACA program, and just that shit-eating grin, ear to ear. He walked out to that podium. I mean, it was
That guy.
it was Christmas.
Have you ever seen anyone that happy?
No, like literally. And that moment to me really embodies. I guess there's other moments too. Joking about separating kids from their parents and that sort of thing. But yeah, so that moment really kind of captures the essence of this person who, was coming out, making a decision, knowing that it was going to destroy the lives of many thousands of people in a very real and tangible way, and just could not be happier about it because of the types of lives that were being ruined.
I want you to react to this. Hey, guys, the next person that gets in there could be worse.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I really don't think it's possible.
Well, I mean, I don't know that much about this Whitaker guy. Is it Whitaker? He doesn't seem great.
No, well, so for our purposes, right? For immigration, our bubble that we live in, I don't think there's an AG that could be worse than Jeff Sessions, even a Chris Kobach. I think Jeff Sessions was way out at the edge, and Chris Kobach, who I don't think is going to get nominated to be AG. But even a guy like him, I don't think he would be worse than Jeff Sessions. I don't think he would be better than Jeff Sessions, right? I don't think he could be worse. And so here's my prediction. Chris Kobach gets nominated for Department of Homeland Security.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe now it looks like it might be Chris Christie for the AG. But I don't think they're in any hurry because I think they want Whitaker to kind of like mess around with the Mueller thing for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what's your hot take? What's your prediction?
Yeah, I don't know.
My prediction is pain.
Yeah. I do think they're kind of scraping at the bottom of the barrel a little bit, because who wants to work for this administration, really? And especially like if you're an experienced attorney and you're looking at the, the investigations coming down the pike, I just don't know. I don't know. So
I think Chris Christie would do it.
Chris Christie, what are you going to get? I don't know anything about his immigration takes, but I mean, he seems pretty run-of-the-mill, corrupt New Jersey guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, as far as immigration, he's never been. I don't think he's ever. Well, okay, he did have the dumbest idea in the primary, and that was anyone who came in on like a tourist visa, we were going to like tag them somehow. And we were going to use the same systems that like Federal Express uses in order to like track packages. We were going to track everyone who came into the United States. And when their time was up, something would flash on the system and then we could like pick them up to deport them.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I think I think that was the dumbest. Maybe so. There were other ideas like build the wall and mass deportation that I think are kind of mean and stupid. This one was just plain dumb. But I don't think he's never had real. And of course, he had to have this type of opinion in the primary. I don't think he has like a real big animus towards immigrants. So I don't think he would be. I think Jeff Sessions' goal was to implement white nationalist agenda into the immigration system. I don't think that will be Chris Christie's goal.
Right.
And he's a big fat guy, and that's fun to make fun of.
Well, okay, I'm not here for your body shaming, but
yeah, I am.
So let me ask you about this debate. So I posted this picture on Facebook of a Mormon handcart wagon train. Somebody posted a thing about, I just shared it. I didn't create it, but it was sort of a thing about how, Mormons once fled persecution, and they fled to a different country at the time for safety, and sort of comparing it to the modern day situation.
What
With
country
these
did they flee to?
Well, Utah, I think the Utah territory was part of Mexico at the time.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. Anyhow, so I had a couple family members chime in, and they had some flaming hot takes. But one thing that, one of the points I made was that, we're a big, rich country. We can absorb these people. And we also happen to have, this is sort of a secondary reason for me, but we do have labor shortages in important industries like meatpacking and agriculture. So it's not like there's no work to be done. There's nothing for these people to do. And this family member responded, there's no such thing as a labor shortage, only employers who are unwilling to pay to get the job done right. And there are I've seen Tucker Carlson make this argument too. This idea that like really the real demons here, or the real bad guys here, are the employers who don't want to pay a living wage. And I did a presentation recently with a guy who represents a lot of growers, and he said, yeah, if we wanted to attract American workers, we'd have to pay $20 or $30 an hour. And isn't there something to that argument that, like, well, maybe you should?
Well, okay, so there's a lot of stuff there, right?
Right.
Right. They should pay more.
Absolutely. And I agree with that.
To be a selfish American, which a lot of these people are, if they did pay those wages, that's going to have an effect on how much things cost. So, when you start demonizing immigrants because of the costs that they bring, which I think is wholly a fallacy. But if you want to go down that road, it's like, okay, well, in the apple fields and by where you live, if instead of using those immigrant laborers, we use American citizens and we have to pay them $20 an hour, well, apples are going to cost more, right? All the crops are going to cost more. No, and so who's going to be paying those costs, right? The consumer. So I think people should really like think it through. But the bigger point I want to make is to think. I talked to this guy Michael Schmerkanish. He's on POTUS. He's on CNN. He's here from Philly, and this was when the whole like separating the family thing was going on. And his hot take was that these women were using their children to game the system. I thought that was like very offensive. And then his other point was, well, we have to do something. Can we really afford to? What are we going to do with these like 50,000 people? No, don't. He's like, don't you agree that's a problem? And my response was, no, I don't really agree that that's a problem. To think that we couldn't absorb 50,000 people into this country is crazy. But now what we're talking about is a couple thousand people, right? And, Trump is using this emergency on the border of maybe, are there even 4,000 people left in the caravan? I doubt it. But using even a couple thousand people as a national emergency, we're a country of 330 million people.
Right.
Well, I think we can survive. I have more confidence in our country than these people do.
Yeah, and these, I think we have to be careful of these sort of like cynical uses of like left populist positions, because I've actually advocated for a $15 minimum wage and a living wage. And if you are a person who has voted Republican your whole life, and now you want to come at me and pretend like you're for $20 and $30 wages in these industries, when in fact your personal politics have always gone in the exact opposite direction. You've always supported the rights of these employers to exploit their employees in whatever way they want. Then it seems to me that maybe your sudden wokeness on wage labor has more to do with your desire to have the country ethnically cleansed than it does with your belief in like living wages and sticking it to the man, so to speak. So that's a really cynical take. And to the extent that they want wages to be raised, their end goal is not, we want equality of we want more wealth equality. Their end goal would be to further the ethnic cleansing of the country by making it so that I guess we don't need to employ so many people from foreign countries. But the other thing is, some of these industries do pay $15, $16 an hour. I've heard of meatpacking plants where they've offered living wages and benefits, and they still can't fill these jobs. And there's this idea in the right wing sort of world, that we're a country full of like lazy white people who are they're lazy because of welfare. And if we just made life hard on them by taking away their welfare, they would all then suddenly want to work really hard. And it just seems to me to be like really ignorant to think that all those people are going to want to become like hardworking people all of a sudden. Like, society's going to have some lazy folks. And
like us.
Look at what we're doing. So let's see.
So I think Luis is ready. He's bothering us. Now he's like that client, right? That they don't give you anything you ask them for. They ignore your calls. And then when they're ready, when they finally come and they give you everything, they want it filed the same day.
Why is my case taking so long? Well, let's see. I'm looking at my notes here. We've been emailing you since 2015 about the checklist we gave you in 2013. I know, but I dropped it off last Thursday. It seems to be taking a long time. Anyways, I don't know. That is a really frustrating thing I've been dealing with and thinking about, because I've talked before about my Mormon upbringing, and Mormons really love their history, and they see themselves as sort of a persecuted people who fled violence and threats of violence, but yet many of them just don't see that these situations are at all analogous, which is like kicking away the ladder. So anyways,
okay, well, let's try to get Luis here.
I know.
But I'd like to get to know you. Yes, I would. But I'd like to get to know you if I could.
Rude.
Now, Luis, you're one of these lawyers who, when you're trying to get a hold of them and you Google their name, instead of finding like the phone number for their office, you get a bunch of articles talking about how cool and awesome and amazing they are, which is really annoying. You should fix that.
I'll call the Google, let them know.
And so you've been doing a lot of work on this Daca case. Now, I want you to help bring us up to speed, because all I know is like a year ago, Jeff Sessions came out with a shit-eating grin on his face and announced that Daca was over. And yet we're still able to renew people's DACAs. So what happened?
You broke his heart.
Well, once the announcement to rescind DACA was made, there was litigation that was instantly initiated by different groups. And it started in California. The state of California issued or filed a lawsuit against the federal government for the rescission of DACA and their interest behind DACA. The UC Regents, which encompasses the University of California system, like UC Berkeley, UCLA, and so on, they also filed their own suit with their interest. And I represent the 6 DACA recipients that encompass a representation of the 800,000 DACA recipients and their interest in rescinding DACA. So we, at least with our lawsuit, we not only allege that the rescission of DACA violates the the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, but that it also violated certain constitutional protections that DACA recipients had with their DACA reliance interests and things like that. And so we filed a lawsuit in San Francisco, and the matters were consolidated. So us, the UC Regents, and the state of California were all together in one case before Judge Alsop in San Francisco, who heard the cases simultaneously. And so we had to collaborate with the state of California and the UC Regents attorneys to make sure that we weren't having duplicitous efforts and to make sure that our arguments synced with each other. So that was a big growing experience, just working with the Attorney General's office in the California State Attorney General's office, and then Janet Napolitano's attorneys, because she's the head of the UC Regents. And so so we've been working with them. And the case initially took on an expedited docketing because Judge also knew that there was this March deadline. Originally, Jeff Sessions ordered what he called an orderly wind down for the DACA program. And so Judge also wanted to make sure that we had an answer before March. And certainly he issued a preliminary injunction stopping the rescission of DACA and ordering the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services to continue to renew DACA recipients' applications, though new applications are not permitted to move forward. So individuals who never filed for DACA because either they didn't or they weren't eligible at the time cannot do so now, but individuals who had DACA at any point prior can now renew. And so the DACA program has been kept alive by this ongoing litigation. Now, since our lawsuit in San Francisco, there have been other similar suits that have been coming out of New York, out of Washington, D.C., that have followed suit with Judge Alsop's order to keep DACA in place. And so once that was done, the government had filed an appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, in which we had oral argument in May, and they were trying to see whether the rescission of DACA was lawful, and whether the preliminary injunction was something that should have taken place. And so, all of us were anxiously waiting for the Ninth Circuit decision, and the Department of Justice about 2 to 3 weeks ago said that if the Ninth Circuit did not make a decision before October 31st, that they would take this extraordinary step and ask for the Supreme Court to review Judge Alsop's order before the Ninth Circuit made a determination on the matter. In other words, they're trying to skip over the Ninth Circuit and go right to the Supreme Court. They tried to do that once already and it didn't work, but they threatened to do it again. The Ninth Circuit did not respond to that, and they did not make a decision by October 31st. So the Department of Justice then filed a petition for writ of cert for the Supreme Court to review the matter. And then a few days later, then the Ninth Circuit came out with their decision, which was yesterday. Yesterday they came out with the decision, and ultimately the bottom line of the decision is that it kept DACA in place, but it's a 99-page opinion, and the nuances of the opinion I think are very telling because it explains exactly why they think that the rescission of DACA was unlawful, and why not only that, but why DACA was lawful to begin with. So they're answering a lot of really pertinent questions that goes to the heart of the case. Now, undoubtedly, as the Department of Justice has let us know from the beginning, they're taking this case to the Supreme Court. So now they're going to have to file a new petition for writ of cert at the Supreme Court to review the Ninth Circuit's opinion.
Now, just the other day, Donald Trump, he's the president. I don't know if you have been following politics much, but he said that they were super close to getting a DACA deal done, when all of a sudden the liberal court stepped in and did what you're describing, and that sort of erased the timely wind down deadline in March that you mentioned, and now the Democrats won't move on a DACA deal. how much blame are you willing to take for the lack of a DREAM Act? Is it all your fault or just mostly your fault?
I think it's all my fault as an individual, so I will take all of
Yeah,
the
not even the other people
individually.
involved. Not even the other people involved. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's just falling sold on me. And, we did get a lot of pushback once we got the injunction, not only from individuals who, that do not support DACA, but from immigrant rights activists too. We got a lot of pushback saying that we, by helping create this injunction, that we erased the bargaining chip, the pressure point that we had to pass a more permanent solution to DACA.
Who said that? Who said that?
Sorry?
Who said that? I want receipts.
Names and
No, seriously. What dumbass was it? Matthew Culkin, probably. Am I right?
Yeah, so we did get a lot of pushback on that, and we that's something that we certainly considered, that if we got an injunction, that it might play into the political playing field with a more permanent solution. But as you know, as immigration attorneys, we see DACA recipients whose DACA is about to end, and without this injunction, they would have had significant irreparable harm, from potentially losing a home because they aren't going to be able to pay their mortgage if their work permit expires, or some DACA recipients too have a removal order already. And so without them being able to renew their DACA, they're just left exposed with this removal order. So, weighing out the equities, we knew that an injunction definitely weighed in favor of protecting the dreamers and the DACA recipients that are extremely vulnerable to enforcement. So,
So the argument was, you took away their ability to use a vulnerable population's lives and dreams as a bargaining chip. How do you sleep at night?
Right. And so, not everybody agreed with our desire to save these the DACA recipients. There was a lot of talk about like letting people kind of start slipping off to have the sense of emergency be really highlighted, but we just couldn't take that risk.
Yeah, everyone who's not an asshole agreed with you. I just want to read the first line of the opinion. And it says, it is no hyperbole to say that Dulce Garcia embodies the American dream.
I think the word is hyperbole.
Hyperbole. I don't know words.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
It's no hyperbole to say that Dulce Garcia embodies the American dream. You can edit that out, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to, though. That's the best part of the show.
We should have a whole segment of listen to Matthew mispronounce words.
I'd like to hear you in court one day. You're Honer. I'm just here to... okay, so... All right, now, when do we... so let's get right down to it. Who decides ultimately if DACA is legal or illegal? And, if this is a discretionary sort of temporary relief from removal, why can't a president change enforcement priorities and get rid of the program?
Well, that is, I think, the heart of the question, and where the government seemed to dug themselves into a hole. So, as you may remember, a few years ago, President Obama tried to use this program, a kind of the counterpart to DACA, which was DAPA, which was for parents, and it was supposed to be deferred action for parents of U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents. And here's what the Ninth Circuit drew a pretty clear distinction at the verbiage that the government used with DAPA and with DACA. With DAPA, ultimately, Secretary Kelly had said that when he rescinded DAPA, he said that in his discretion, he was deciding to rescind DAPA, and that he doesn't think that it's a program that he wants to continue pursuing. And there wasn't a lot of challenges made to the rescission of DAPA because of the language he used. He said in his discretion, that's what he's doing. Now, the current Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security she had said that not that she is rescinding DACA in her discretion, but she said that that she couldn't continue DACA at all, that she was obligated to end it because DACA was illegal. So we're not talking about a discretionary decision on ending DACA. We're talking about their legal determination saying that it's an unlawful program. So what that creates is it creates a legal question reviewable by the courts. Is DACA legal or not? Were they compelled to terminate it? And they compared the memorandum that ended DACA with the memorandum that ended DAPA, and there was a lot of verbatim language that was the same, except for Secretary Kelly. Then Secretary Kelly said, I'm using my discretion to take away DAPA, and when they took away DACA, they said we have to end it. And so that was a significant change that the Ninth Circuit really paid attention to and said, this makes it so that we can review it. And then they looked at the program as to whether it was whether they can rescind it based on that reason that they had to. And the question was, that's how the courts got jurisdiction on the case to hear it in the first place, which was a huge battle because there was a lot of talk about whether the rescission of DACA was something that the courts could hear in the first place, and that created a legal question.
Okay, so why can't they just be like, memo part 2, also discretion?
Well, I think they can, and the Ninth Circuit actually did say that. They said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but they said something along the lines of like, to be clear, we're not saying that the DACA program cannot be rescinded. We're just saying that it can't be rescinded in this way. So we're seeing a lot of parallels between the decision of DACA and the travel ban litigation, where eventually President Trump got it right with like travel ban 3.0, I think, or where whatever version of it had, where it finally got it right. However, again, the government kind of backed themselves into a corner because now if they say, well, we can see that it's a legal program, but we just don't want to move it forward, then they start getting into an arbitrary and capricious, like maybe it's and the Ninth Circuit kept saying like, well, it sounds like the Department of Homeland Security is starting to use post hoc excuses for what they're doing. And so by really, digging their heels to say that it was illegal, and then not having a lot of support behind it, and then going back and say, okay, well, it was legal, but we want to take it away anyway, then it opens up to a whole bunch of other challenges that they're doing. And so they haven't done that yet, but they certainly could go back at the end of this litigation and say, okay, we're going to try to rescind it a different way. And then we'd have to figure out what the different way looks like and to see if it's subject to court review.
So Luis, now the other big news is what's going on with the presidential proclamation that came down. I said that one right? Proclamation that came down today about ending asylum for anyone who crosses the border unlawfully. Do you see any parallels? Obviously, it's going to be challenged, right? Do you see any parallels with DACA and with what you're doing with that order?
Well, I think so. I mean, looking at the agency's decision, it certainly seems like it could be reviewable by the courts because it ends up being a legal question. I read the proclamation this morning, and it cites two other proclamations. I think one of them was with President Reagan, that he did something similar when Haitian immigrants were coming to the United States, where they used the Coast Guard to stop them midway through and take them back to Haiti. And that apparently the Supreme Court, according to President Trump, had upheld that decision-making authority. And so I'm still unpackaging the full proclamation because I read it this morning, but I suspect that it's going to be subject to a lot of lawsuits in his kind of broad sweep through of prohibiting individuals from applying for asylum. Because I think one of the things that is missing from his proclamation is a lot of like the real life situations that happen near the border. For instance, there's a lot of individuals who end up across the U.S. border from Mexico who were unwilling participants. They were trafficked into the United States, or somehow brought, even if they weren't trafficked for some sort of profit, they were brought here without their will, and they find themselves in the United States, and now they want to ask for asylum. Certainly, I've heard stories from some of my clients who they started walking in the Mexico desert, and they ended up in the United States. They were trying to get there, but they didn't know at what point the United States ended and Mexico started, and vice versa, until they saw, and the whole goal was to seek asylum. So as soon as they saw an immigration officer, they waved them down and said, "Hey, I've been trying to look for you. I had no idea where the port of entry was. I was trying to find an officer. I'm so glad I found you. Please help me seek asylum." Now, those individuals are not going to be able to seek asylum, even though they had no idea where they were. And so, those nuances like that ultimately this proclamation strips away some of the U.S.'s obligations to these asylum seekers. So, I mean, I think it's also going to matter a lot how it's ultimately carried out.
Right.
So, but I think it does lend itself to a lot of litigation.
Matthew, do you have any other questions? I do have to get going, but I want to thank you for your time. You're always so generous, and
Well, thank you, Stephen.
no.
I do want to give a quick shout out to the DACA recipients, the 6 plaintiffs who really bravely stuck their neck out to be part of this lawsuit. I know in the beginning when we first filed, our lead plaintiff, Dulce Garcia, she got a lot of death threats, and she really put herself out there. And we knew that this was a possibility from the beginning, and they actively took this step to help protect hundreds of thousands. So huge shout out to them, because we would not be able to do it with them. And as Matthew said, the opinion starts with a very bold statement that Dulce Garcia and individuals like her really do embody the American dream. And, I am a DACA recipient myself, and I am a dreamer. And to just have that be recognized by the Ninth Circuit it was just a overwhelming flow of emotion to have the judiciary acknowledge our contributions here in the United States, and by the example that Dulce provided. But certainly she's a very inspiring example, but she's one of many who also are paving the way for a lot of people. So shout out to our plaintiffs who are doing amazing work.
Well, and I do have to say that I have 2 dreamers that work for me, and they're very appreciative. So, yeah, you're doing good work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Luis.
And did you get Alma Davids? Did you get her coffee right? I mean,
I did.
Okay.
All right. Hey,
that's important.
We'll talk to you soon, Luis.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
All right. Well,
bye.
I'm glad that there's smart people out there doing smart things, because if it was just you and me, I mean, can you imagine?
Oh, my.
Not good. Matthew, it was good talking to you.
Last week, I kind of gave an uplifting story, or just a story that had a happy ending, and people seem to like it. Do you have any stories like that you want to share before we leave?
Not really. Yeah, really? I don't. Maybe next time. I need to hear them. I need the listeners to share with me their uplifting stories, because right now I'm in need of that.
Yeah, I don't think I have any this week.
All right, next week. Let's do a positive show next week. How about this? Was a positive show. We talked to Luis. It was great.
That is positive, right? DACA is still around.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's positive. I'm sorry I buried the lead.
All right. We will TTYL.
See ya. Good night.